Hollywood's golden age built its glamour on beautiful lies. Behind every perfect marriage, every studio-arranged romance, every confirmed bachelor lived truths that could destroy careers overnight. These 15 actors loved in secret, hid in plain sight, and paid devastating prices for moments of authenticity. Some found ways to live openly within closed circles. Others took their secrets to the grave.
A few left coded messages in their work, hoping future generations would understand. Their stories weren't just hidden, they were actively erased, rewritten, buried under decades of studio propaganda. But the truth survived in private letters, sealed testimonies, and the memories of those who knew. These are the queer stories Hollywood desperately tried to forget.
Subscribe to discover the hidden lives behind the silver screen's most carefully constructed facades.
The star who chose love over fame. William Haines was MGM's biggest box office draw in the late 1920s, a charming leading man whose comedies filled theaters nationwide. But unlike his closeted peers, Haines made a choice that would change everything. He refused to hide his relationship with Jimmy Shields. When Louis B. Mayer issued an ultimatum, marry a woman or lose your career, Haines walked away from stardom without hesitation. In 1933, at the height of his fame, he left acting entirely rather than pretend to be someone he wasn't. What happened next was remarkable. Haines and Shields built a life together that lasted 50 years. They became successful interior designers, decorating homes for Hollywood elite, including Joan Crawford, Carole Lombard, and even Nancy Reagan.
Their relationship was an open secret in certain circles, accepted by friends, ignored by the press. Haines threw legendary parties at their Los Angeles home, where gay and lesbian Hollywood gathered safely. He created spaces where others could be authentic, even as the industry demanded they hide publicly. When Shields died in 1974, Haines was devastated. He died shortly after, and they're buried together. Haines's story is extraordinary because he chose differently than almost everyone else in his era. He walked away from everything Hollywood offered because love mattered more than fame, proving that authentic relationships could survive outside the spotlight, even when careers couldn't. Alla Nazimova, the actress who built a queer paradise. Alla Nazimova was one of silent film's most enigmatic stars, known for her dramatic intensity and artistic vision. Born in Russia, she brought European sophistication to Hollywood and used her considerable wealth to create something unprecedented, a safe haven for queer artists. The Garden of Alla, her Hollywood mansion and apartment complex, became legendary. From the 1920s through the 1930s, it served as a gathering place for gay and lesbian entertainers, writers, and artists. The pool parties were infamous. Coded invitations went out to those who understood, and what happened there stayed there. Nazimova's own relationships with women were relatively open within her social circle. She had long-term partnerships with several women, including actress Gleska Marshall.
She married twice for appearances, but her true emotional life centered on women. She coined the term sewing circle to describe the network of lesbian and bisexual women in Hollywood who socialized together. This included major stars who maintained carefully constructed heterosexual public images while living very different private lives.
Nazimova's willingness to create physical spaces where queer people could gather safely was revolutionary. She used her power and wealth not just to protect herself, but to shelter an entire community. When her career declined and she eventually lost the Garden of Alla to financial troubles, she'd already created something that couldn't be taken away, a model for queer community building that would influence generations to come.
The confirmed bachelor who lived with his mother. Clifton Webb became famous for playing sophisticated, acerbic characters in films like Laura and The Razor's Edge. His screen persona was urbane, witty, and pointedly unmarried, characteristics that made him perfect for certain roles, while coding him as confirmed bachelor in the press. Webb lived with his mother Maybelle for his entire adult life.
She accompanied him everywhere, premieres, parties, even to film sets. The arrangement was presented as devoted son caring for beloved mother, but it served another purpose, providing perfect cover for his actual romantic life. Webb had a long-term relationship with columnist Clifton Webb. They shared the same name. Later, he was involved with dancer Clifton Webb for decades. Living with his mother meant he was never expected to marry, never questioned about dating women, and could maintain his private relationships without intense scrutiny. His closest Hollywood friends knew the truth. Noel Coward, himself gay, was a lifelong friend and occasional lover. They traveled together when possible and maintained intimate correspondence. Webb's career flourished precisely because he found a socially acceptable way to remain unmarried. The devoted son narrative was so compelling that it deflected suspicion entirely. When his mother died in 1960, Webb was genuinely devastated. They'd been companions for decades, and her death left him without his primary shield. He died 6 years later, having spent his entire career hiding in plain sight, using one of Hollywood's most effective covers, Maternal Devotion.
The Latin lover who never married. Cesar Romero epitomized Latin lover sophistication for decades, dancing with stars from Carmen Miranda to Ginger Rogers. His romantic leading man status made him valuable to studios, yet he never married, unusual for a matinee idol whose appeal depended on romantic desirability. Romero cultivated an image as an eternal bachelor, a charming escort who dated beautiful women but never settled down.
He attended premieres with actresses, was photographed at nightclubs with female companions, and gave interviews about not finding the right woman. The performance was flawless. Behind the scenes, Romero had long-term relationships with men. He was particularly close to actor Tyrone Power, whose own sexuality was complex and carefully hidden. They were frequently seen together at private gatherings, though always with plausible deniability.
Romero's Catholicism complicated his personal life. He reportedly struggled with reconciling his faith with his sexuality, attending Mass regularly while living what the Church considered a sinful life. This internal conflict was common among Catholic actors of his generation. What made Romero's situation particularly poignant was how his career depended on being desired by women while he desired men. He played the fantasy perfectly on screen and in public appearances, but the cost was living a deeply compartmentalized life where authentic connection existed only in carefully guarded private moments. He died in 1994, having never publicly acknowledged his sexuality, taking his truth to the grave as so many of his generation did.
Barbara Stanwyck, the tough dame's hidden heart. Barbara Stanwyck commanded the screen with an intensity few actresses could match. Tough, independent, fiercely talented, she played women who refused to conform, perhaps because she understood what it meant to hide fundamental truths about herself. Industry insiders widely believed Stanwyck was lesbian or bisexual, though she married twice and adopted a son, creating the family image studios demanded. Her marriages were reportedly troubled and brief, while her closest emotional bonds were with women. Her relationship with actress and stuntwoman Marion Ma Morgan was particularly significant. They lived together at various points and remained close until Morgan's death.
Stanwyck also had rumored relationships with several actresses, including Joan Crawford and Helen Ferguson, her longtime press agent and companion. In 1962, Stanwyck took a bold risk playing Jo Courtney, a lesbian character in Walk on the Wild Side. Even then, the character was coded rather than explicit, but Stanwyck brought remarkable depth to the role, perhaps drawing on personal experience.
When writer Bose Hadley later questioned whether she'd had relationships with women, comparing her to Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich, Stanwyck reportedly threw him out of her house. She would never confirm or deny, maintaining silence as her shield. Stanwyck died in 1990, having never publicly discussed her sexuality, but her performances showed strength, independence, and defiance.
Perhaps those characters were the closest she could come to living authentically in an industry that demanded she hide.
Montgomery Clift. the tortured soul who loved men. Clift revolutionized screen acting with his vulnerable, emotionally raw performances. Sensitive and introspective, he brought depths of feeling that changed what male actors could express. But that sensitivity came partly from living between two worlds, the person he was and the person Hollywood demanded he appeared to be. Clift was gay in an industry that demanded heterosexual romance.
Unlike some peers who managed the facade with relative ease, he struggled profoundly. The constant performance, the need to hide relationships, the fear of exposure, it took a psychological toll that manifested in self-destructive behavior. He made a crucial decision early. He refused to move to Los Angeles, living instead in New York where he could maintain more privacy.
This physical distance gave him space to live more honestly, at least privately, away from Hollywood's constant surveillance. His close relationship with Elizabeth Taylor fascinated the public, who wondered if they'd marry. What they witnessed was genuine love, but not romantic love. Taylor became his closest confidant, one of the few people who fully knew and accepted him.
In 1956, after leaving a party at Taylor's house, Clift crashed his car, suffering severe facial injuries. The accident left him in chronic pain and led to heavy drinking and prescription drug abuse. Many believed the accident accelerated a psychological collapse that was already happening, the result of years living a double life.
Clift died in 1966, at just 45, destroyed by pain, both physical and emotional, unable to reconcile who he was with what the world demanded.
And Dora's real magic. Agnes Moorehead achieved lasting fame as Endora on Bewitched, but her career spanned decades of distinguished work in film, radio, and television. A consummate professional and gifted character actress, she built a reputation for excellence while carefully protecting her private life. Moorehead was married twice, both unions brief and reportedly unsatisfying.
After her second divorce in 1958, she never remarried. Industry rumors suggested she was lesbian, though she vehemently denied such speculation when confronted. Her closest companion for many years was actress Debbie Reynolds, though Reynolds has stated their relationship was purely friendship.
Moorehead also had long-term close relationships with several other women in the industry, relationships that raised eyebrows among those who understood the codes. What made Moorehead's situation particularly difficult was the timing. She achieved her greatest fame during the 1960s and early 1970s, when societal attitudes towards homosexuality were especially harsh.
Being exposed as gay could have destroyed her career on family-friendly television. Moorehead was also deeply religious, which may have created internal conflict if she was indeed lesbian or bisexual. She spoke frequently about her Christian faith and maintained connections with conservative religious communities. When she died in 1974, rumors persisted but were never confirmed. Her estate went to religious charities.
Whether out of genuine faith or final protection of reputation, Moorehead ensured that even in death, she maintained the image she'd carefully constructed throughout her life.
The cowboy who lived with Cary Grant. Randolph Scott epitomized rugged Western masculinity, starring in dozens of cowboy films that defined the genre. Tall, handsome, and convincingly tough, he was the ideal Western hero. But his personal life told a very different story than his on-screen persona suggested. From 1932 to 1944, Scott lived with actor Cary Grant in a beach house in Los Angeles.
For 12 years, they cohabited openly. Photographers documented them lounging by the pool, cooking together, living as a couple in full view of Hollywood. The arrangement was remarkable for its visibility. Magazines ran features about their bachelor lifestyle without explicitly examining what that meant.
The studios carefully controlled the narrative, presenting it as two friends sharing expenses rather than what it appeared to be, a romantic partnership. Both men married during this period, Grant multiple times, yet they continued living together. The marriages didn't end the primary relationship. They provided cover while the core partnership continued largely unchanged. What's particularly fascinating is how this arrangement persisted for so long without major scandal. The answer lies partly in Scott's convincing Western masculinity and Grant's sophisticated charm. Neither fit stereotypes of how gay men were supposed to look or act, making it easier for the public and press to accept the official story. When they finally separated in 1944, both continued their separate lives and careers.
Scott married and had children, but those who knew them understood that those 12 years represented something profound that neither publicly acknowledged, but neither fully abandoned either.
Marjorie Main, Kettle's private life. Marjorie Main became America's favorite rural mother as Ma Kettle in a series of popular films during the 1940s and 1950s. Her earthy, no-nonsense persona made her beloved, while her private life remained carefully hidden from public view. Main was married briefly to psychologist Stanley Krebs, who died in 1935. After his death, she never remarried or publicly dated.
She lived for many years with actress Spring Byington, a living arrangement that raised quiet speculation but was presented publicly as two career women sharing a home for practical reasons. The relationship between Main and Byington was an open secret within certain Hollywood circles. They entertained together, traveled together, and were inseparable for years. Some contemporaries believed they were life partners. Others insisted they were simply close friends. The truth may never be fully known. Main was intensely private about her personal life, giving few interviews and deflecting questions about romance or remarriage. She focused press attention on her work, her farm animals, and her practical salt-of-the-earth persona that fit her on-screen image. What's significant is how her maternal, asexual Ma Kettle image provided perfect cover for an unmarried woman in Hollywood. Playing mothers and grandmothers removed her from romantic storylines entirely, allowing her to avoid questions about her private life while maintaining a successful career. Main died in 1975. Her relationship with Byington never officially confirmed, but quietly understood by those who knew them both.
The silent suffering. Richard Cromwell was a promising young actor in the early 1930s, appearing in films like The Lives of a Bengal Lancer and Jezebel. Handsome and sensitive, he seemed destined for stardom. Then, in 1945, he married Angela Lansbury in what would become one of Hollywood's most tragic beard marriages. Lansbury was just 19, Cromwell 35.
The marriage lasted less than a year before Lansbury filed for divorce, later revealing that Cromwell was gay and the marriage had been unconsummated. She described it as a devastating discovery that left her feeling betrayed, though she later expressed compassion for Cromwell's impossible situation. After the divorce, Cromwell's career effectively ended. Whether due to being exposed as gay or simply bad timing as the industry changed, he found fewer and fewer roles. He retreated from public life, eventually becoming a successful ceramicist and potter. What makes Cromwell's story particularly heartbreaking is the multiple betrayals. His betrayal of Lansbury by marrying her despite knowing the truth, the industry's betrayal of him by making such marriages seem necessary, and society's betrayal of both by creating conditions where honesty was impossible. Cromwell lived quietly until his death in 1960, rarely discussing his brief marriage or his sexuality. He became another casualty of a system that demanded impossible choices, leaving damaged lives in its wake, both his own and those of people like Lansbury, who got caught in the machinery of Hollywood's closet. The Hoofers' hidden truth. Dan Dailey was one of MGM's most talented musical performers during the 1940s and 1950s, known for his dancing ability and boyish charm. He starred opposite Betty Grable in several successful musicals and seemed to embody wholesome American entertainment. Behind the scenes, his life was far more complicated. Dailey was married 3 times, all marriages troubled and brief. He struggled with alcoholism throughout his career, a problem that may have been exacerbated by the stress of hiding his sexuality. Industry rumors suggested he was gay or bisexual, though he never publicly addressed such speculation.
What made Dailey's situation particularly difficult was the nature of his stardom.
He played romantic leads opposite major female stars, requiring convincing on-screen chemistry while maintaining a public image as a desirable leading man. The disconnect between performance and reality created psychological strain. Dailey also faced professional pressure from the studio system, which tightly controlled his image and personal life.
Any hint of scandal could have destroyed his career, so he maintained the facade of heterosexuality while reportedly having relationships with men in private. His alcoholism worsened over time, leading to professional difficulties and damaged relationships. Some contemporaries believed his drinking was directly related to the stress of maintaining his closeted lifestyle, though Dailey himself never made such connections publicly.
He died in 1978, having spent his entire career performing not just on screen, but in every aspect of his public life, the exhaustion of which may have contributed to his ultimate self-destruction through alcohol.
Lizabeth Scott, the husky voice that hid nothing. Lizabeth Scott was a film noir icon, known for her sultry voice, cool blonde beauty, and morally ambiguous characters. She starred in classics like Dead Reckoning and The Strange Love of Martha Ivers, but her career was nearly destroyed by rumors about her sexuality.
In 1954, Confidential magazine prepared to publish an exposé claiming Scott was a lesbian, naming specific relationships and incidents. Scott's studio, Paramount, intervened, and the story was allegedly killed in exchange for damaging information about other stars. But the damage was done. The rumors spread throughout Hollywood and beyond.
Scott sued other publications that printed similar stories, winning some cases but unable to stop the whispers. Her career suffered dramatically. Major studios became reluctant to cast her, and roles dried up by the late 1950s. She largely retired from acting, living privately and rarely giving interviews. What made Scott's situation particularly unjust was how the mere rumor destroyed her career, regardless of truth.
Whether she was lesbian, bisexual, or straight, the suggestion alone was enough to make her untouchable and an industry terrified of scandal. Scott never publicly discussed her sexuality, maintaining privacy until her death in 2015. She lived to age 92, outlasting almost everyone from her era, and saw massive changes in how society viewed LGBTQ+ people.
But she never commented on the rumors that had derailed her career 60 years earlier, maintaining silence that was either dignity, self-protection, or both.
The Boy Next Door's Secret. Van Johnson was MGM's idealized boy next door during the 1940s, with his red hair, freckles, and all-American charm. He starred in wholesome films like The Human Comedy and 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, becoming one of the studio's most valuable properties. But his carefully constructed image concealed a very different reality.
Industry rumors suggested Johnson was gay, though MGM worked overtime to suppress any such speculation. The studio arranged his marriage to Eve Wynn in 1947, reportedly as much for image protection as genuine romance. The marriage was troubled from the start and lasted only 21 years. Johnson allegedly had relationships with several male stars, including Keenan Wynn, Eve's ex-husband, creating an extremely complicated situation.
The arrangement among the three was reportedly understood by all parties, though never publicly acknowledged. What made Johnson's closet particularly suffocating was how perfectly he embodied wholesome American masculinity. His entire value to MGM rested on audiences believing he was exactly what he appeared, the nice boy you'd want your daughter to marry. Any hint of homosexuality would have shattered that image and destroyed his career.
Johnson reportedly struggled with the deception, leading to drinking problems and depression. The psychological cost of performing wholesomeness while hiding his authentic self took a severe toll, though he maintained the facade throughout his life. He died in 2008, having spent 80 years in the closet, never publicly acknowledging the truth that industry insiders had known all along.
His legacy remains the price of protection.
A successful career built on lies that ultimately trapped him in an image he could never escape. The character actress nobody questioned. Hope Emerson was impossible to miss. 6'2" and powerfully built, she played intimidating matrons, prison guards, and tough frontier women. Her physical presence was so commanding that casting directors never considered her for romantic roles, which paradoxically gave her more freedom than conventionally attractive actresses enjoyed.
Emerson was openly lesbian within her social circle, living with her partner for many years. Because she wasn't cast as a romantic lead or sex symbol, her personal life received far less scrutiny than it might have otherwise. The industry essentially desexualized her based on her appearance, which created an unexpected shield.
She socialized openly with other gay and lesbian actors, attending the infamous sewing circle gatherings and other private parties where Hollywood's queer community could be authentic. Her home was reportedly a safe space for other closeted performers.
What's particularly interesting about Emerson's story is how her physical appearance, which likely caused personal pain and limited her roles, actually provided protection that beautiful actresses never received. She could live relatively openly because no one expected or wanted her to be a romantic figure. Emerson earned an Oscar nomination for Caged, 1950, playing a sadistic prison guard.
Her performance was chilling, and some have analyzed it as containing coded queer subtext, though this interpretation remains debated. She died in 1960, having lived more authentically than many more famous stars. Her story illustrates how Hollywood's beauty standards, while oppressive, sometimes created unexpected spaces for those who fell outside them to live with greater honesty than the system typically allowed.
Dame Judith Anderson. Dame Judith Anderson was one of stage and screen's most respected dramatic actresses, known for her intensity and power. Her performance as Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca remains iconic. The obsessive housekeeper's devotion to the dead Rebecca read as deeply queer to many viewers, though the film carefully coded rather than stated this explicitly.
Anderson married twice, both marriages brief and childless. She spent most of her adult life unmarried, focusing intensely on her career. Within theater circles, it was quietly understood that Anderson preferred women's company romantically, though she never publicly discussed her sexuality. Her most significant relationship was reportedly with producer Catherine Cornell, though details remained extremely private. Anderson maintained several close female friendships throughout her life that may have been romantic partnerships, but she protected them with fierce privacy. What made Anderson's situation unique was how her fierce dramatic reputation and advanced age created space for privacy. By the time she achieved major fame, she was already in her 40s, past the age when constant questions about marriage and romance would have pursued a younger actress. Anderson continued working into her 90s, ultimately being named a Dame Commander of the British Empire. She died in 1992 at 94, having outlived almost everyone from her generation and witnessed massive social changes regarding LGBTQ+ acceptance. She never publicly discussed her personal life, maintaining until death the privacy she'd fiercely guarded throughout her career. Her legacy remains her extraordinary performances, while her private truth stayed exactly that: private, protected, and ultimately unknowable, except to those she trusted completely. 15 stories, 15 lives shaped by an industry that demanded beautiful lies. These Golden Age actors navigated impossible choices: career or authenticity, success or truth, fame or love. Some chose careers and spent decades performing heterosexuality as convincingly as they performed their scripted roles. Others chose love and walked away from stardom. A few found ways to live relatively openly within protected circles while maintaining public facades. What unites these stories is cost, the psychological toll of hiding, the relationships denied or damaged, the self-destruction through alcohol and drugs, the internal conflicts that could never be resolved or even acknowledged. They paid for their careers with pieces of themselves, year after year, until many couldn't remember who they'd been before the performance began. But their stories also contain resistance, creating safe spaces like the Garden of Alla, living together openly and daring the industry to say something, leaving coded messages in performances that queer audiences recognized and treasured.
Building chosen families and protective networks that sustained them when the outside world demanded they disappear. These 15 actors deserved better than the choice Hollywood forced on them. They deserved to love openly, to live authentically, to build careers without sacrificing their souls. That they couldn't isn't their failure. It's the industry's shame.
Subscribe to ensure these stories aren't forgotten and that future generations understand the real cost of the Golden Age's golden lies.